Hello, HolyWireMod here. Welcome to tutorial 24 in the GLua Pro series, where we're going to be taking a look at player key values, networking data, and a simple timer. So, networking, for those who are unfamiliar, is the ability to send information from the server to the client, or the client to the server. And generally, you might want to keep this information separate for security reasons. So you keep all the sensitive data on the server, and you'll keep all the stuff that you want to be shared to the client and send it to the client. We'll cover security in the next tutorial, so don't worry about that. But let's start with net messages. So the first thing you need to do is have a network string so you can actually send network messages. Here we're going to call this one example name, and then we're going to start the net message on the server. So let's say when the player spawns, we want the player to receive some information. So let us take example name, and then we're going to send it to the player just as such. If you want to send it to every client, that's fine too. All you need to do is put broadcast right here, and there you go. That will send it to every single client. However, in this case, we're going to be specifying the player. Now, on the receiving side, on the client, you're going to have somewhere net receive. It doesn't have to be in CL underscore in it. You can make another unique file just for this purpose, and that's fine too. So we're going to have the same name, which is the network string which we added. So right here, it must be the same name for it to identify the net message. Then we're going to have function, and we're going to have the first argument of length. And this is going to be how many bits that the function is in length, and we'll show you that in game in just a little bit. So here we need some information then to send. So this is where we get into player key values. So a player table is essentially user data. However, you can tack on your own custom key values and store that information onto the player, either server side or client side. Here we're doing it server side, so we'll only be able to access player.weapon on the server. And if I were to do local player.weapon here, it would return nil and have no idea what we're talking about because they are defined separately. Okay, so we know about weapon shotgun as being our favorite weapon to spawn with the give command, and this will return the weapon as an entity to player.weapon, just as such. So let's store some other information here, so we can do tables as well. So just 1, 2, 3, 4, something very basic. We can store vectors, so we have spawn point, so get position. We can store angles, so we have get angles, just as such. And let's store an integer, so we'll have health. And of course, there we go, we have the health with the player when it spawns. So that's very useful. Now let's send all this information over to the client. And you'll see there's going to be a little bit of issue of sending certain things, but I'll show you how to overcome all that. So we're going to have some sample data. We'll just say sample data, that can be our title. And we're going to be writing that as a network string. Now to write an integer, it's a little bit different. So you're going to have integer. The first argument is going to be the actual number you're going to be sending, which in this case is going to be health. And the second one is going to be the number of bits that's required to contain the number. So in this case, if we were to pull up a calculator, we're going to be using a programming calculator, but I'll explain in detail. The number of which we have to have is 100. So if actually I'll go right here, clear this, it's 100 as such. And this, if we're to take a base 2 number, which is what's represented when we say bits, so when I say base 2, I'll go into scientific calculator, and we have 2 to the 7th power. That's 128, which is ample enough for us to store 100 within that number of bits. So then we go back to the programming calculator, and I put 128 here. We can see that we require 8 bits to store that integer. So I'm going to be putting 8 now. Technically for 100 you'd only need 7 bits. However, general rule of thumb is you want to take the number of bits that's bare minimum, which is 7 in this case, and then increase it by 1. I'll provide a data table in the link in the description below so you can understand that a little bit better. And these are just 2 basic data types. Let's go read these really quick. So when we receive, we are going to be assigning these to local variables. So we'll have net read string, and then we'll have the health, so health, and net read int, and that must use the same number of bits. Now, it is very important that you read the information in the same order in which it is written. And I'll show you a couple more examples of this. So let's write an entity, which is another valid data type. And generally you might put player. In this case, we're going to be player weapon. However, that's going to return nil in this case, as the weapon is defined only on the server here. And then we are going to instead write another string, and I'll show you all this in game, so don't worry, where we're going to take weapon and we'll say get class. So we'll just send the class over instead. And then we're going to write an angle, we'll write a table and write a vector, and I'll just copy and paste this for the sake of time. So angle with angle, table with the table, and the vector with the spawn point. Okay, so that's a good bit of information to send over. And then let's go here on the client, and what it's going to look like essentially is we're going to have the weapon, which I said, so local weapon, and that's going to be a read entity as such. Remember, that's just going to be nil, so we're going to have weapon class instead, which is going to be read string, just like that. And of course, for the others, we can just copy and paste that. We have angle, table, and vector. So if I were to just copy and paste this over here, just to overemphasize this point, you can see it's all in the same order, and that's exactly what we need, or else you're going to have some issues. So then let's print all this information, which I'll just copy and paste that as well. And here we're going to take length and print that as the last thing we're printing with the length of the message. And then we're going to be sending information back to the server. So we'll say start, we'll have example name, and then we're going to send to server instead of send, as it's coming from client to server, and we're not going to put any information there as well. So just to show you what's going on here, we're going to just copy and paste, as the net receive is slightly different on the client than it is the server. And that's because there's an additional argument here. So for it to go example name, we're receiving on the server side, you can see there's player, and that's going to be the client which is sending the information to the server. So we have print net message received from player nick of length and length right here. So we'll see how the length is different when no information compared to length when we send a lot of information. And I'll give you a good idea. Also, likewise, just to reiterate the point, we can call this information anywhere on the server. So we're going to be calling this information here on the server assigned to the player who sent the net message, and we'll be getting the weapon in the table. So let's go into the game and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we're now on the server, and as you can see on the left hand side, we have the net message was received from HolyWireMod, omnied.com, length of 0 because no information was sent, and we have the weapon which is stored in the player user data, as well as the table. So when we go into the client side, here we can see that we have, of course, the sample data, which is the title, the health. Here's what I was talking about with the null entity and the weapon. So instead we send the player class, and that's fine. I'll show you a way to get around this if you need to. And we'll have angle, the table, vector position, and the message length, which you notice is different here because it's a lot more information being sent over. Okay, so now let me show you another way to actually send some networked data. So instead of using the net message and all this stuff, we can just get rid of all this as we don't need it anymore. And instead, let's set up a timer, or a simple timer. And this timer does not require any identifier, and it has no parameters for the function. And it's just going to run this function after 5 seconds of me saving the file. So here I'm going to be getting some information. So let's set up that information really quick. So here, let's say that we want to have network data, which we can call on either the client or the server. So here we're going to have data called title. And just as before, we'll just call this sample data. So that's going to be a string. Then we can set up an integer as such, so network integer. And we'll call this one health. And that's going to be the spawn point as here. And just following the same procedure for the rest of this and to save us some time. Here we have the weapon, which is going to be a type entity, the angle, which is of course angle, vector, a vector, and you get the point. So whatever data type you need, you just put that at the end of set NW, and you've got that. So how do we get all this information? Well, very simple actually. Okay, so now we have the server restarted here, and Now I'm going to actually show you, since I'm respawned, all the data has now been set, and now we just need to get the data after I save the file. So let me go and do that. We're going to go to the client side right here, and we're simply going to be printing local player, which is going to be the client, and the same names of all the different network strings that we sent. It doesn't have to be in the same order, and you can even call these on the server if you'd like to. So let's just save that. So 5 seconds will pass, and then you'll see some information pasted into the console. So there we have it. And here we have simple data. We have the vector position and all this information that we had before. As you can see, I've put that twice. That's okay though. And as you can see, now we have the weapon entity on the client for the shotgun. So that's how you get around the issue that you saw before. Anyway, I hope that explains everything. If you have any questions about this, feel free to leave some in the comments section below. In the next tutorial, we will be going over how to stop script kiddies and hackers who are malicious to try to actually get into your server and cause chaos. So I hope you enjoyed. As always, if you like the content, feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment below, and bell. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Have a nice day. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out Hexane Networks for affordable and high-performance server hosting. That's Hexane Networks, whose link is in the description below.